Let me ask you something. Has someone ever said or done something that lived rent free in your head for hours, maybe even days? We let people's actions hijack our peace like it's nothing. But here's the truth. You don't have to give away your calm like it's up for grabs. Today, I'm going to show you how to respond instead of react, how to never let anyone take control of your emotions again. Let's be honest. Most of the time, when we get angry, it's not really about what the person said. It's about how it made us feel. That sting, that tightness in your chest, that frustration that builds up and spills over later. It usually comes down to one thing: we've taken something personally. But here's a truth. That'll change how you handle every difficult conversation, every rude comment, every frustrating encounter. You can choose to detach from the emotion without detaching from the person. Think about this. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Your instinct says, they disrespected me. But that driver doesn't know you. They didn't see your face, your car, your life story. They just made a selfish move. Yet somehow we make their behavior about us. We say, how dare they? And with that, we give away our peace. This is where the power of perspective kicks in. Most people are walking around carrying the weight of their own issues. Stress, insecurity, trauma, fear. And when they lash out, it's usually got nothing to do with you. They're leaking. They're reacting to their own life. But what do? We absorb it like a sponge. Instead of recognizing the pain behind the punch, we take it as a direct hit. And we wonder why we're tired, irritated, burned out. You're not broken. You're just absorbing what was never meant for you. Now, I'm not saying ignore people. I'm saying see them clearly. When someone's rude, when they snap at you, when they roll their eyes or cross a line, pause. Ask yourself, is this really about me? More often than not, it isn't. And that space between the moment and your reaction, that's where your power is. It's where you start choosing your response instead of being owned by your reaction. You don't need to retaliate. You don't need to match their energy. In fact, when you do that, when you let someone else's behavior control your emotions, you're basically handing them the remote to your inner peace. You're saying, here, you push the buttons. You decide how I feel. But the moment you learn to observe instead of absorb, to listen without attaching your identity to the offense, you take that remote back. Let me give you a simple tool: curiosity. When someone disrespects you, instead of jumping to conclusions, lean into curiosity. I wonder what's going on in their world. That one thought can soften your internal reaction. You're not excusing the behavior, but you are choosing to view it through a lens that keeps you calm, grounded, and in control. I've had conversations where someone came at me with sarcasm, accusations, negativity, and I could feel that spike in my chest. Instead of going toe to toe, I grounded myself. I reminded myself, this isn't about me. And guess what happened? The moment passed. They calmed down, or they didn't, and I still kept my peace because I wasn't attached to proving anything. I was attached to my clarity. There's real strength in not taking the bait, in knowing who you are so solidly that you don't need to defend it every time someone else forgets it. When you start detaching from the emotion, you stop making other people's behavior a reflection of your worth. That's freedom. That's emotional intelligence. That's what being unbothered really looks like. If you can practice this, just this one shift, your entire emotional landscape changes. You're not walking around on edge anymore. You're not stewing in silent resentment. You're centered. You're in control. And that right there, how you start becoming the calmest person in the room. Because you don't need to take it personally to take control. A lot of people think that staying calm means being passive. That if you're not yelling, if you're not snapping back, if you're not defending yourself at full volume, then you're somehow weak or letting people walk all over you. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The calmest people I know have the clearest boundaries. Not because they're loud, but because they've learned that peace is not something you beg for. It's something you protect. We've been conditioned to think that setting a boundary means confrontation, that it's a fight, that it's this heavy, awkward thing. But in reality, boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. They tell people, here's how I allow you to access me. And the clearer that door is, the more respect flows in both directions. You don't need to yell to get your point across. In fact, the louder your reaction, the more power you've already given away. That's why I say set boundaries, not battles. Your tone can be calm. Your words can be few. But your message, it can be solid as stone. When you speak from clarity instead of emotion, people hear you differently. You're not adding fuel to their fire. You're standing in yours. I had a client once who told me, I hate confrontation. I just avoid it. I shut down. And I told her, you're not avoiding confrontation. You're avoiding clarity. And that avoidance, it creates more stress than any difficult conversation ever could. Because every time you stay silent when someone crosses a line, you're quietly teaching them that it's okay to keep doing it. That silence doesn't feel like peace. It feels like resentment. So what does a boundary look like in real life? It looks like saying, hey, I don't allow that kind of tone when we talk. Or, I'm not okay with being spoken to like that. Let's come back to this when we're both calm. Notice something, no drama. No shouting. No insults. Just clarity. Calm is not weakness. Calm is strategy. And here's the key, boundaries aren't for the other person. They're for you. They're a way to remind yourself of what you value, what you expect, and what you will or will not tolerate. Because if you don't set the tone for how you're treated, someone else will, and they'll base it on their standards, not yours. The truth is, most people aren't intentionally trying to cross your boundaries. They're just operating based on what's been allowed. Maybe no one ever told them it wasn't okay to interrupt or raise their voice or make passive-aggressive comments. But once you lay it out clearly, once you stop engaging in the back and forth and instead draw that quiet line, you give them a choice, respect it or move. And if they choose not to respect it, that's okay too. Not everyone belongs in close proximity to your peace. That's not bitterness. That's balance. You don't have to invite everyone into your emotional space. Not every text needs a reply. Not every disagreement needs a debate. Not every offense needs a reaction. That's the beauty of boundaries. They filter for you. What's powerful is when you realize you can enforce those boundaries without changing your tone, without raising your voice, without losing your composure. It's not about being cold. It's about being clear. You can say no with kindness. You can walk away with dignity. You can remove yourself from chaos without explaining your every move. People may not like it at first, especially if they've benefited from your lack of boundaries. They might push back. They might call you difficult. That's okay. Let them adjust. Your job isn't to manage their comfort. It's to protect your peace. Because once you start valuing your time, your energy, and your presence, you'll stop handing it out like a discount. You'll realize that not everything deserves your attention. Not everyone gets a front row seat to your life. You don't have to fight to protect your peace. You just have to mean it. Most of our frustration, our anger, our overreactions, they don't come from what's actually happening in front of us. They come from the story we're telling ourselves about what's happening. And here's the truth: most people don't realize that story. It's not always accurate. In fact, a lot of the time, it's just emotion doing the talking. Your brain is a meaning-making machine. The moment something happens, someone gives you a weird look, they don't respond to your text, they speak with a sharp tone. Your brain goes to work writing a narrative. They're mad at me. They're being disrespectful. They're trying to get under my skin. But here's the catch. You don't know that. All you know is what you saw, what you heard. The rest is assumption. And those assumptions are usually powered by past wounds, insecurities, unprocessed emotions. That's where the trouble starts. Because once you accept that first story your brain gives you, without questioning it, You begin reacting to that story, not to reality. And suddenly, you're upset, you're overthinking, you're snapping back or shutting down, all based on a version of events that may not even be true. So here's the move: pause and ask yourself, what else could be true? Just that one question, that one moment of curiosity is enough to break the loop. Maybe they're not ignoring you. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they're not trying to be rude. Maybe they're having a rough day. That shift from assumption to inquiry creates space. In that space, you get your power back. Now, this doesn't mean you let people off the hook. It means you stop putting yourself on an emotional roller coaster based on unverified stories. You stop jumping to conclusions that only make you spiral. Because when you control the narrative in your mind, you control the emotional response in your body. You stay grounded instead of triggered. I'll give you an example. I was in a meeting a while back and someone cut me off mid-sentence. Immediately, my brain went to, he doesn't respect me. And for a second, I could feel the heat rise. That urge to speak louder, prove my point. But then I caught it. I took a breath and thought, what else could be true? Maybe he was excited. Maybe he thought I was done. Maybe he wasn't even aware he did it. I chose not to let that moment dictate the rest of the conversation. I didn't swallow my voice. I just responded from a place of calm instead of offense. The meeting moved forward smoothly without tension. That's what this is really about, not letting temporary emotions write permanent scripts. Because the more you practice questioning your first reaction, the more you stop giving away your peace to misunderstandings. You start realizing that you are the author of your story, not your fear, not your ego, not your past. It's easy to live on autopilot, to believe the worst, to assume people are out to get you. But that life is exhausting. It keeps you reactive. It keeps you on edge. Peace comes when you take ownership of your thoughts, when you catch them before they catch you. This takes practice. It's not a one-time fix. You'll slip. You'll have days where your emotions get the best of you. That's okay. The goal isn't perfection. It's awareness. Because the more aware you become of the stories you're telling, the more power you have to rewrite them in real time. And if you want to stop being bothered by people, start there. Don't just change how you respond to them. Change how you interpret what they do. Your peace doesn't begin with better people. It begins with better perception, with slowing down enough to check the facts before reacting to the fiction. Because the story you tell yourself will either protect your peace or poison it. And that choice is always yours. There's a moment right between the trigger and the reaction that most people miss. It's small, but powerful. It's that split second where your body tenses up, your heart rate climbs, and your brain tells you, say something, do something, fire back. It's that space. That's your window. That's where all the work is done. The people who learn to pause in that space, they're the ones who stay in control no matter what's coming at them. Now, I get it. When someone disrespects you, when they push your buttons, that pause doesn't feel natural. It feels like pressure, like something's building and you've got to let it out or you'll explode. But what if I told you that pausing doesn't mean suppressing? It means processing. It means you're choosing not to react on instinct, but to respond with intention. That pause isn't weakness. That pause is training. It's the reps you put in when no one's looking. It's the self-control you've been building when things are calm, so that when things get loud, you don't have to match the chaos. You hold your ground. You don't shrink and you don't swing. You stand. And when you train the pause, you start to notice things. You notice your breath. You notice your tone. You notice that the person raising their voice in front of you might be loud, but they're not in control. You are, because you didn't jump into the fire with them. You stayed where it was calm. Here's the thing. Most people regret what they say in the heat of the moment, not what they don't say. The text you sent too fast, the comeback you launched too sharp, the energy you match when you should have just stepped back. That's what sticks with you. But if you can learn to pause, even just a few seconds, you start making choices from clarity instead of chaos. It's not about freezing up. It's about creating just enough space for your emotions to settle and your judgment to come online. The pause gives you time to ask, is this worth my peace? Is this who I want to be right now? That alone can stop you from going places you'll regret later. Now, I'm not saying you won't still feel the frustration. You will. You're human. You'll get irritated, offended, disappointed. But the goal isn't to stop feeling. It's to stop leading with those feelings. It's to let your values lead instead of your triggers. That happens in the pause. I've had moments where someone tried to bait me. Passive-aggressive comments, underhanded shots, sharp tone meant to provoke. And believe me, the urge to clap back was strong, but I paused. I took a breath. I reminded myself, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. That one breath, it saved me energy. It preserved the moment. And more than that, it reinforced my own self-respect. See, when you react to everything, people can play you like a piano. Push a key here, get a rise out of you. Push another, watch you spiral. But when you pause, they can't find the buttons anymore. You stop being predictable. You stop being easy to trigger. And that's where real strength lies, not in the comeback, but in the control. And you want to know what's powerful. When you've trained that pause so well, it becomes second nature. You're no longer holding back with gritted teeth. You're just at peace. Not because life is easy, but because you've built the skill to stay steady no matter how messy it gets. That pause is your filter. It's how you separate what deserves your energy from what just wants your attention. It's how you protect your relationships, your reputation, your sanity. And it's how you make sure you're responding from who you are, not from how they made you feel. So if you really want to stop letting people bother you, stop trying to control them, and start mastering that moment in between. Because when you train the pause, you don't just win the moment, you win yourself.